The first time I saw her was at the bus stop late at night. It was a little after 3 a.m. I had been the designated driver for several friends after a celebration, and now I was driving home in a light drizzle of rain. When I first saw her there, huddled on the beach and shivering, I drove past. Then, guilt hit me, and I had to turn around. I may be slipping quickly into old age, but I still remember how scary it can be to be a young woman in the middle of the city, especially alone at night. I pulled up to stop and offer her a ride. At first, she declined, shaking her head and saying no thanks from the bench. When I told her there were no more buses at this stop until dawn, she reluctantly came over and got into my car. Half an hour later, I dropped her off at a dark apartment complex, only a little out of my way, and told her to be safe. The next time I saw her, I'll admit I didn't recognize her. It was about 2 weeks later. I was in the parking lot of a grocery store about to head home. I placed my bags into the trunk of my car, and then walked my cart over to its spot. When I turned around, she was standing next to my car. She looked nervous, shy, maybe a little ashamed. When I approached, she asked if I had a couple bucks for the bus. Everything is plastic these days, so I rarely carry cash. I managed to fish out $1 in change. She thanked me and walked off. It wasn't until I was driving home that I realized she was the same girl from the bus stop. It's a small world. Less than a week later, I ran into her again. Pouring rain during traffic meant everything was moving at a standstill. As I sat in my car waiting for everyone to move forward, I saw her walking up the sidewalk. She was soaking wet, wrapping a thin jacket around herself. I rolled down the window and yelled and asked if she needed a ride somewhere. At first, she only stood and stared. Then, she smiled and ran over and hopped into my car. She was heading to the university, which was definitely out of my way. With the weather and traffic, I really didn't want to make the extra trip, so I offered to take her until the intersection. We sat in silence for most of the ride. I tried to make small talk at first, but all she would do was smile and then look out the window. As the intersection approached, I felt bad about dropping her off in the rain, still so far from where she was going. When I offered to take her the rest of the way, she turned to me and smiled. Not many people stop and offer rides to strangers. She was picking up at the hem of her jacket, her fingers fidgeting like she was nervous or in a hurry. Yeah, a lot of people are wrapped up in their own lives, or just don't care. But most people are probably afraid. It can be dangerous to pick up strangers. Do you think I'm dangerous? She was watching me intently now, her fingers still picking at the hem. No. I glanced over and smiled. You don't live as long as me without learning to read people. It's all about the body language and listening to your gut. She was quiet for the rest of the car ride, except for the occasional direction. Finally, we pulled up in a dimly lit parking lot behind some tall buildings. I remember noticing there were no other cars around, and wondering if this is actually part of the campus. As she unbuckled her seatbelt, she paused, looking out the window into the rain. You know, even at your age, you could still be wrong about some people. She turned slowly into her seat, staring at me with pitch black eyes. Her mouth spread into an unnaturally wide smile, showing rows of sharp teeth. Sighing, I grabbed her throat with my claws and pulled her face as close to mine as possible. She started squirming and trying to get out of my grasp when the flames began pouring out of my eyes. Trust me, you really don't live as long as me unless you can read people. It stared through my window. It didn't matter what window. It didn't even matter what floor. At night, that horrifying, scarred, smiling face stared back at me. It waited for something. I didn't know what. I was afraid to find out. I first tried calling the police, thinking it was some stalker. The police came and saw nothing. They left, telling them if I ever saw anything else to call them. How was I supposed to tell them that it was still standing in the window watching me, smiling, showing its disgusting crooked teeth? I hadn't left my home in weeks. I got the call that I was fired from my job 3 days ago, and when I tried to explain what was going on, when I tried to see my boss, it wouldn't leave me alone. I couldn't see it, but it was still there. Even during the day, I was trapped by a monster that wanted something from me. It wasn't until last night that I finally found out what it was waiting for. It stared at me, changing rooms with me. Its wicked grin and crazed eyes followed my every movement. For the first time since it started watching me, it opened its awful teeth and spoke. "Let me in," it said. My stomach dropped. I didn't want to look at it, but I was so shocked I couldn't help it. What? I whispered to myself in surprise. I narrowed my eyes and the faint details in its face started to become a little bit more clear. Its eyes started to burn like smoldering embers. "Let me in, David," it said again, chuckling cruelly like there was a joke I wasn't in on. I backed away from the window, watching it watch me. No! No! I yelled at it. I ran, but no matter where I went, its face taunted me with awful laughter. I tried hiding and running to my bedroom, but its face took up the entirety of my sliding glass door. When it spoke, its voice shook my bones. David, let me in. David! I'd never felt such a primal fear, such an urge to hide out of pure survival instinct. I ran into my closet, slamming the door shut. I pulled down clothes from the hangers, hiding myself in them like a child who thought their blanket could save them from the monster. The yelling had stopped for a moment, and there was no window to watch me through. Was it gone? After a moment of silence, I let out a small sigh in relief. I reached through the pile of clothes and for my doorknob, and just as quickly as it all had stopped, it started again. My door started rattling uncontrollably, and I yanked my hand away. It screamed for me. David, let me in! Let me in! I covered my ears hoping to drown out the screaming, but it never ended. The sound of its scream bled through my fingers. It went on for hours, but I kept looking at my phone, hoping for the morning to come. 11:30 p.m.? Not a single minute has passed since I locked myself in this closet. Time is no longer your friend. Let me in. I've been here for almost a day. I've been counting the seconds, the minutes, the hours, to try and distract myself. It's still there, screaming for me to let it in. 11:30 p.m. Time still hasn't passed. I'm going to kill myself if this continues. I can break off the hanger and just jab it into me. It would be so much faster than waiting. I had it ready, gripping it tight in my hand. I can't handle this much longer. I'm going insane! It stared through my window, but it screams for me through the door.